who's got something to say about how Texas A&M is not going to be making its first college football playoff appearance?
I could give you why it wouldn't happen. They're one of my, I think if we're doing this is like a power ranking kind of way, I think that, I don't know, we'd probably have them 1 or 2. Most of us would, but I can tell you why it wouldn't, if that's what you want.
Sure.
Because it's in the SEC West.
Period.
And it's got to get through Alabama, and it's got to get through an LSU, which is probably not going to be as bad as it was. It's got to deal with Auburn. It's got to deal with both Mississippis. It's got a really rough road, and it is difficult to win that division. And if we're just doing like which one's next, doesn't mean Texas A&M can never get there. It's just there are other teams that might have an easier path. So from that kind of standpoint, the runway might be clearer for other teams than it is for A&M, even if you just look at it, whereas A&M's probably one of the most talented team in the group that we're looking at from a, recruiting and talent standpoint. It's got that giant Alabama boulder blocking its path.
So I've already tried to like game this out to like the counter move and then my counter to the counter move, because number one, in the argument about Texas A&M not being explosive on offensively and not being able to get the kind of explosive plays that you need, I'm willing to entertain the idea. Gosh, I've overthought this so much. I'm willing to entertain the idea that somebody is going to emerge at the wide receiver position and that they are going to be able to create that explosiveness. Just the floor for talent is too high not to think that there might be some development that we haven't seen yet, something that could happen. And then all of a sudden, everything really starts to click for that Texas A&M offense. Defensively, I think we all agreed that they are elite. The second piece of this overthinking by Chip is, what if in the pandemic season, we thought that the offenses were going to be out of sync? And I think that some of the conversations that we've had and what we've observed is that defenses were the ones that were arguably like maybe a little bit more hampered in terms of, the lack of time. It isn't necessarily about the lack of time to install as much as it was just the lack of reps to get out there and be facing a live offense and be ready to go for game speed and things like that. And maybe we start to see slightly a shift with a full offseason ready to go of maybe the return of defense. And if there is the return of defense, then that could come with a Texas A&M, a little bit of a boost for Texas A&M where you can win with defense in the way that some Georgia teams under Kirby Smart that have reached SEC championship games, that have reached national championship games with, you got Jake Fromm as a quarterback and you're in the national championship game with the halftime lead, like you can win with defense. And that would be the blueprint, the idea that a full offseason allows the defense to close the gap just a little bit, and that could benefit Texas A&M. So I'm willing to entertain that they could find explosiveness. And I wonder if in 2021, we see the defenses play a little bit better than they did in 2020.
So you're guaranteeing they make it this year?
Yes, is what I'm saying.
Wow.
I mean, Jimbo may be stubborn. I think there's probably no maybe about it. Like, he's stubborn. He believes in what he does, but he's not an idiot. And I do think that they have some analytics department at Texas A&M who can tell him, hey, your offense is getting less explosive relative to the field every year you've been at A&M. And really every year since about 2015. So 5 years in a row, your offense is declining in explosiveness. I think there's a chance they could work on that. They could maybe play a little bit more outside their system, take a few more shots, do a few more QB-friendly things that don't rely on, the West Coast hitting the guy perfectly in stride type thing, creating separation through shot plays as opposed to just perfectly reading the defense and hitting the guy when he's a step and a half open. Jimbo did recently say that Damon DeMoss was making major strides. He was a 5-star receiver they signed 2 years ago. We'll see if that's true and if they actually put him in the game. Last year really didn't a whole lot. I know he was banged up at times. I think the one thing to hear that you could see a scenario, and I have A&M high on my list on this. I think they're one of the very few teams that has probably a greater than a 10% chance to make the playoff for the first time this year. Is they play so slow on offense that it is hard to blow them out. Now, Bama does it sometimes, but if they were able to play a close game against undefeated Alabama at home, and then they put up some style points in the remaining games, Missouri, South Carolina, Auburn, you have to go to Ole Miss and LSU, which is not easy, and Bama wins the SEC, you could easily see a one-loss A&M that lost close to Alabama that basically dominated everybody else, you could see them making the argument. I think that's fair. It probably also helps their case that they got left out last year. Deservedly so, in my opinion, but still, the narratives seem to sway voters here a little bit. So I can see the case for them.
I think in that scenario, though, you need they need everything else to be perfect too. Like they can't have an undefeated Pac-12 champion, or
Right.
you know what I mean? Like they need the other conferences to have a couple 2-loss champions.
Totally. I would lean more towards Bud. Like when you said they play in the SEC West, I was going to go with, well, that's my reason why they will make it in, because you do have that advantage. That's the division we've already seen a non-division champ make it from. They do have a pretty manageable schedule. Now, I think it'll be tougher than expected because I do think Ole Miss will be better defensively. I think Auburn will be better, who they play at home. I do think LSU will be better, but I still think Texas A&M probably is favored in every game, most likely, except for the Alabama game. And now they've lost by 3 touchdowns or more. If they keep it close somehow at home, and as we're talking about, run the ball, keep it slow, slow it down, try to keep that offense at bay. Like I could see a recipe for Texas A&M to get in. Bud brings up a great point. Like you do need, or Tommy, like you do have to have a little bit of chaos, but the Pac-12, we have we'll talk about some Pac-12 teams too, but is there a confidence that there's going to be a 1-loss champ? No, I don't know. The big, that's the issue though. It's going to be for that 4 spot. Does everything unfold perfectly? And I would say that it does help them that they were close last year.